I'm going to demonstrate a signal flow through an analog desk in our recording studios. Here we are going to consider 3 stages: microphone, line level, and speakers. I'm using Neotek Élan desk in Studio 1, UHI, Path College. I use this radio as a sound source with a Soundcraft Orpheus multi-pattern condenser microphone in the live room. The signal is carried by the balanced XR cable to the wall box. Here I used channel 1. With a routing matrix on a desk, you can choose any number of channels, and these will depend on your decision. When the signal enters the desk, it's amplified by the channel's preamp from lower mic level to the line level. This is done by adjusting the gain port. At this point, the routing matrix comes in handy to decide the destination of our signal outputs after it has passed through the channel strip. And because we want to record on channel 1 in Pro Tools, we'll select the button marked 1 and 2. The microphone preamp feeds the main fader, which then feeds the multi-track buses, and the tape return feeds the rotary monitor level, which then feeds the main stereo mix, which is heard on the control room speakers. At this stage, we can use the equalization section to attenuate or boost specific frequencies. Channel fader is turned to the left. This is because we are using channel 1. Odd number turns to left and even number turns to right. While the desk is still muted, this is just to avoid any signal spike. We'll need to apply phantom power by pressing the button plus 48 volt. Condenser microphones require this small amount of voltage to run. The channel fader is raised at 0 dB and switched on by pressing the on button. This is to ensure the full signal is sent to Pro Tools. Then the mic gain is raised for the input channel in Pro Tools. I'll raise the gain about -10 and -12 dB just to keep the headroom for the dynamics and effects processing. For Pro Tools to get the sound source coming from the live room and analog desk, it passes through an ADDA converter, means analog to digital and digital to analog. This is done by converting the audio into binary codes for the computer to understand. Then I'll select my choice of monitors and give it a little bit of gain. By doing this, applies the ADDA converter by getting the signal back from digital to analog. And we can control the volume of the outputs by the master fader and give it a little bit of gain by raising the control room level. Then I'll switch on the fader on the monitor path and raise it on unity gain. The view meters on the desk meters the signal level coming back from Pro Tools on the monitor path. And the monitor I'm using are the pair of Dina Audio Acoustics Otari MX80.
Head of news gathering, Jonathan insists voters will get to hear from all sides.
To send the signal to the musician's headphone in the live room, I'll connect the headphone adapter on the Q-Amp 1 and connect the headphone on the adapter. On this desk, the headphone mix is already set up into the A and B auxiliary send masters, on which I'm raising. And I'll turn up the send on the actual channel strip to send to the headphones. To apply the compression on the track, I'll need the patch bay cables from the input module insert point sends to outputs of URI, and from the inputs of URI into the output of the channel, which is the input module insert point return on the patch bay. To apply the reverb on my track, I'll need the cables from the aux buses into the inputs of auxiliary equipment 13 and 14, and output of the outputs of auxiliary 13 and 14 into the line level 23 and 24. These are just stereo empty channels. Then I'll need to turn up the auxiliary masters and raise the aux send on the actual microphone channel and switch on the faders and raise the faders to the unity. Having the opportunity to use the tape machine would apply a warm sound on the recording. But it depends on one's preferences and taste of music. In our days, most people prefer to use the tape machine plugins, which could give nearly similar results to the actual hardware prototype. The difference between studio to live mixer will depend on their main purpose of usage. Whereas, studio mixer has a different monitoring system comparing to a live one. In the recording studios, you'll find the stereo output monitor speakers. In a live setting, you'll find front-of-house speakers and aux sends for floor monitors and other extra speakers. In a recording studio, there is capability of every musician to have their own headphones in the live room, and the studio analog mixers are often bigger and expensive. They are designed for recording studios, and studio analog mixers are more likely to be connected to a multi-track recorder, such as the tape machine or Pro Tools. Frequency response in a recording studio, it is very crucial, especially in listening and mixing room. These spaces should be treated for a lower RT60, means the length of time it takes for a signal to drop by 60 dB. For a studio control room, it should be by 0.2 and 0.5 seconds. To get better results, recording studios should have no parallel walls, and the walls should be treated by absorbent materials, from the floor to the ceiling. Bass traps should be placed in the corners of the room, and the sound diffuser should be placed behind the back of the mixing engineer. This is just to solve the frequency response issues. And the monitor speakers should be placed in symmetry equilateral triangle to the mixing engineer. This is a demonstration to the signal flow through an analog desk used in a live application. I'm going to use MH3 owned by Path College. The signal starts entering the desk through the connected inputs. This signal goes through the mic preamp by passing through the channel strip. Then it passes through the equalization section. MH3 has a semi-parametric equalizer. Then the signal moves through the auxiliary send section. This allows us to send a copy of the signal to effects and other processing units. These also send the mix to the onstage monitors. That's followed by the channel pan port. And finally, the channel fader, which determines the amount of the signal to be sent at the front of the house monitors through speaker A in the socket labeled right, speaker B in auxiliary 4. I will connect the input through the stage box into the channel XLR inputs. But today, I have decided to use a direct mic input at the back of the desk. I'm using a Behringer S2 connected into the channel 1 of the line inputs. And I use my vocal as a sound source. To connect our main front of house monitors, I'm going to connect the XLR cables into the mix left and auxiliary 4 outputs on the back of the desk. After setting our channel fader to infinity gain at 0 dB, I can now lift up our stereo yellow colored master fader, and we should be able to hear the output from the front of the house monitors. The effect rack contains graphic equalizers, compressor gate, reverb, and other effects units. I'm going to connect the compressor to an individual channel. Here, I will connect the jack labeled 1 and connect it to the channel 1 insert send, and take the jack cable connector labeled 2 and connect it to insert return. This will send the entire signal into the compressor and back through into the return. Then move into the stereo output bus. On the back of the compressor, I will take the corresponding jack connector labeled 1, carrying the signal from the desk and connect it to the channel 1 input. Then the jack connector labeled 2 will plug it into the output of the channel 1. This returns the compressed signal into the desk. To send the signal on the reverb unit, I'm using the XLR output auxiliary 3. I'm plugging the XLR connector labeled 2 into the socket label 3 on the back of the unit, and I'll take the jack connector at the end of the cable labeled 2 in and plug it into the left input at the back of the reverb unit. To send the wet reverb, I would use the jack connector labeled 2 out left and 2 out right. These are connected into the left and right output back of the reverb unit. The effects return to left and right jacks are then connected into the line input left and right on a suitable stereo channel. Then these will combine the left and right signal to be controlled by one fader. Finally, I'll raise the blue fader designated for effects. It is important to note that the meters we can see beside the faders are metering how much signal coming into the desk, not how much you're sending out. When comparing the difference between live mixer and analog studio mixer, one will find a difference in capability of monitoring. Especially for live mixer, they have the front of houses speakers, whereas in the recording studio, you'll find the stereo monitor speakers. And also, live mixer's aux sense provides the copy of the signal to the floor monitors for singers and musicians. Whereas the aux sense in the recording studio's mixer are used to send a copy of the signal into the musician's headphone in the live room.